Russia's efforts to establish a presence in the Asia-Pacific region have been unsuccessful. The prospect of easing tensions between the United States and China is one of the few that truly concerns Moscow. From Moscow's vantage point, such a turn of events, even if temporary, would pose a threat to Beijing's support for Russia in international fora. San Francisco will play host to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit on November 15 as a proving ground for the Kremlin's concerns. The summit's main event will probably be the meeting between Vice President Joe Biden of the United States and General Secretary Xi Jinping of the Chinese Communist Party. Russia, in an effort to keep its participation in the summit low-key, sent Alexei Overchuk, the Prime Minister's deputy in charge of Eurasian integration, according to Russian media reports, Rossiyskaya Gazeta, November 10. A pivot to the east, initiated by Russia, began at the 2012 APEC summit in Vladivostok. The summit this year has been largely ignored in Russia, with only a few skeptical comments appearing in mainstream outlets. Izvestia, November 7. Moscow's war against Ukraine has brought increased international scrutiny of Russian dealings in Europe and elsewhere. The Kremlin has labeled a number of countries as unfriendly countries, due to their enforcement of harsh sanctions, including the United States and many European countries. The Straits Times, March 7, 2022. The Mainichi, March 8, 2022. In addition, the nuclear disarmament agreement with Japan has been scrapped. RBC.RU, November 9. The agreement to purchase millions of artillery shells from North Korea has become the focal point of Russia's Asia policy. CEDM, November 3. Russian policymakers frequently discuss the growing rivalry between the United States and China. Their method is flawed because it does not take into account the complexities of the intertwined economies of the two countries. Republic.ru, November 10. The strengthening of economic ties with China, which has replaced the West as Russia's primary trade partner, has provided some relief to the Kremlin from the pressure of Western sanctions. However, only 2% of Chinese exports actually make it to Russia, and Moscow has a hard time understanding why it is not as vital a trading partner to Beijing as it is to Moscow. The Insider, November 8. Riddle.io, November 3. Official efforts to portray the strategic partnership between Russia and China as having a firm and well-balanced basis are beginning to look increasingly shaky. Truth be told, that base has been weakened due to the Kremlin's woes in Ukraine and the worsening economic situation in both Russia and China. The 1st of November, Russian International Affairs Council. Arms production remains stagnant despite the Russian government's best efforts to stifle inflation by raising interest rates and increasing spending on the defense sector. Kommersant, November 9. Re-Russia.net, November 1. The Chinese economy has suffered as a result of Xi's strategy of increasing party control over strategic industries. China's capital has concluded that Moscow isn't the answer to its economic slowdown. Kommersant, the 7th of November. China wants the world to have reliable access to energy. Its stance on the conflict in the Middle East is heavily influenced by the worldview it holds. Beijing hopes to use a policy of non-intervention to balance against Washington's readiness to actively deter escalation by deploying aircraft carriers to the region. Nezavyzhmaoy Vono Obosreni, November 9. Beijing has few military instruments for projecting power and protecting its oil interests. Despite the high risk of destabilization resonating from the war in Gaza, Beijing remains hopeful of achieving success in its approach as benchmark oil prices are trending down. Russia, on the other hand, is dismayed by a drop in oil revenues that were desperately needed to finance its war effort. The Moscow Times, November 9. It's possible that Vice President Biden and Chinese President Xi will be able to agree on the importance of avoiding a destabilizing cycle in the Middle East. However, Moscow commentators are more interested in projecting the Israel-Hamas conflict into a future World War III. Rossiyskaya Gazeta, November 8. Russian President Vladimir Putin has abandoned his usual geopolitical wrangling in favor of publicly declaring Russia's support for the terrorist organization Hamas. Putin appears to believe that military ties with Iran are more lucrative than lukewarm relations with Israel. Svoboda.org, the 28th of October. This choice may lead to stronger ties with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, who has positioned Turkey as a champion of the Palestinian cause. Nezavizhimaya Gazeta, November 8. While Putin has no wiggle room to negotiate with the West, Erdoğan has. Meduza.io, November 2. Putin has decided to skip the summit in San Francisco in favor of making his fifth visit to Kazakhstan so far this year. Novaya November 9. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev complied, saying that there was a pressing need to discuss crucial economic issues. While in Astana on November 1, French President Emmanuel Macron was given every assurance that Kazakhstan is tightening its compliance with the Western sanctions regime. RBC.RU, November 2. While Putin does not seem particularly concerned about American or European influence in Central Asia, he has felt compelled to emphasize Moscow's continued sway in the region in response to Beijing's steady efforts to bolster its position there.